TheFirstT.net, the NFL Draft. Coming up next week, which keeps all of my NFL writer buddies busy. Nate Davis is busy stirring the pot with mock drafts and mock trades and all that other good stuff. You can find him out at the USA Today, or you can find him and a various sort of Joshua Tree look at By Nate Davis out on Twitter. The Joshua Tree Tour. Nothing like that going on. Nothing quite that exciting here this summer, right, Nate?
No, not on my end. You know, I'm looking forward to new Pearl Jam's new album dropping, but I think the Irish guys taking the year off, and they've earned it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then there was the whole Mick Jagger thing, which almost had me to Jacksonville next week on the eve of the draft, but instead, I am homebound and watching all things purple. The Ravens on the clock with 22. Lots of things happening in and around this draft that have very little to do with the Ravens. From a Ravens standpoint, no second-round draft pick. Eric taking the draft over for the first time. But really looking for different kinds of football players in this offense than maybe other teams are. The times, they're not a-changing. They've changed here in Baltimore. We're trying to get a scorecard to figure it all out around here, Nate.
Well, I can imagine, and I was stunned at how much, Eric kind of let the defense change, during free agency. Obviously a surprise to see Terrell Suggs changing uniforms, but I think any of those changes you could kind of, understand by themselves, but to see so much talent walk out the door, obviously Earl Thomas changes the calculus a bit, but this is definitely going to be a new-look team, and like you said, I think the Ravens may be looking at different players than other teams offensively, just based on the fact that I think, they're going to look a lot different than other teams with the way they played this year.
How do you feel about this overall, Nate? I've talked to a lot of people. I haven't found anyone saying, I'll trade my offense for yours. Give me that Lamar Jackson and we'll build something special around him. Every team in the league passed on him a year ago this week. He went out and won a bunch of football games, but still, even in the aftermath, whether it was Super Bowl week, before and after the combine, leading up to the draft, and the aftermath of free agency, I haven't found anybody who's really – I found more people that believe Joe Flacco is going to quarterback a playoff game in Denver more than Lamar Jackson's going to win 2 or 3 Super Bowls here.
Yeah, I think a lot's going to depend on Greg Roman, and how does this offense evolve under him? How does Lamar evolve as a passer? You always hear the trope that players tend to make that biggest leap from year 1 to year 2, and then Lamar is clearly a player that's got a lot to learn. I think being an athletic quarterback is great, particularly young in your career, because it does give you something to fall back on and allow you to make plays when that first read's not there, maybe that second read's not there. I think that's kind of why maybe Kyler Murray is going to be an attractive option this year as opposed to a guy like Dwayne Haskins, because we've seen when you're not an athletic quarterback, you're a pocket pound guy, and that first and second read aren't there, and maybe you don't get to the third and fourth. You tend to take a beating. We saw that with Josh Rosen last year and some other guys. But the key now is for Lamar to evolve, for the offense to prove that teams can't crack the code on them the way that they did, the way the Chargers did in the wild card round. And he's going to have to beat teams with his arm and with his mind, and not just try to do it with his legs all the time. And I think right now that's going to be the book on them is make Lamar stay in the pocket and try to beat you, throwing the ball. And he's shown that he can make big plays. He's also shown that he's not especially accurate at this point, and maybe doesn't get to those secondary reads. So a lot to be figured out, but I think certainly he's young enough and has time to make that leap.
Nate Davis is our guest. He is with USA Today. He does mock drafts and all sorts of stuff. You can find him and a very empty Cleveland Browns Bowl out on his Twitter frontage, along with the lads from Dublin. You've picked DK Metcalf at 22 to the Ravens, and look, all these mock drafts, we will be mocking all of them come next weekend, right? But Metcalf visited the facility this week, a little bit of a workout wonder, and certainly at a position that the Ravens, if you've pointed out, have had a very, very dubious gray history with Mark Clayton and Bashad Perryman and Travis Taylor, as you've pointed out. this is a different kind of receiver they're looking for. I queried John Harbaugh about that at the owners' meetings a couple weeks ago about, this Steve Smith will be a good wide receiver here because he'd love to crack down on a safety. He'd like to take out a cornerback. He'd like to get up on a linebacker, give him some ear cheese. Not every wide receiver, and certainly not the modern-day Cowboy, is going to be built for this offense or drafted into this offense. This is a different kind of offense for all parts. I mean, for the kind of offensive linemen they're going to want, the kind of tight ends that they picked last year, as well as when it comes time for them to use draft collateral on a wide receiver, the kind of wide receiver they're going to want.
Yeah, I think so, Nestor. I'm not in love with DK as a prospect. Honestly, I think he's actually a little overvalued and a little overrated. I think all things being equal, I'd rather have his teammate A.J. Brown, or Hollywood Brown out of Oklahoma, and there's some other guys. But, we do know that DK is a physical freak. He's a strong guy. He's a big guy. He can run straight lines and 9 routes in a fast manner, right? So I think he's, we talked about earlier, I think he's one of those guys that might fit uniquely well into this offense. Like you said, I think he's a guy that can block downfield and clear some guys out for Lamar Jackson on the move or Mark Ingram. Maybe even, those tight ends if they're getting the ball. But he can also stretch a defense for you. He's the type of guy that even if Lamar is still struggling maybe on some shorter routes or some touch throws or that kind of thing, I mean, he can certainly loft 140 or 50 yards downfield to a guy like DK Metcalf to make those safeties and linebackers respect the pass. So I do think, even if DK is not a guy that's going to come out of the box and be a 1,200-yard receiver for you, he's the type of guy who I think is uniquely suited to help the Ravens the way this offense appears it's going to be constructed.
Well, it got drawn up a lot differently from the running back position as well last year, right? Like, we saw one set of running backs just get put to the side, literally, and changed everything on the fly. And, part of this is John Harbaugh surviving, right? Like, I don't know that everyone would have bet on that, certainly back at Thanksgiving, leading up to Christmas, even in the aftermath. I still thought if he wanted to leave, this was his opportunity to go coach the Dolphins or the Packers or wherever, even the Browns. All these jobs were available this year. It has worked out very, very strangely. Let's say if you and I had talked around Halloween or Thanksgiving, that the trajectory of this franchise has changed dramatically here in the last 5 months, and much more so than probably anything we've ever seen here in 23 years as a franchise, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's true. I want to say it was the game last year when the Steelers came to town. That was one that I covered. The Ravens lost that game. I want to say kind of late, and that was the one where myself and others were asking John Harbaugh. It seemed like I think they were even going into a bye week. Was that going to be the end for him? It didn't appear like they were going to make the playoffs. That they weren't playing well. You always hear players say, and even coaches say, that sometimes in about 10 years the message gets stale. It's time to kind of change the voice. But, they pulled themselves out of it by switching to Lamar. Like you said, they changed what they did at running back. And I think in some ways...
By the way, after Pittsburgh, they were 4-5, just to reset. They had lost 3 in a row. New Orleans, late, ugly. At Carolina, ugly, really ugly. And then the Pittsburgh loss at home by a touchdown, 4-5. And we never heard from Joe Flacco again, right? Literally.
Well, and that was part of the problem, too. They were trying to do the whole offense with Joe starting and Lamar and the special packages. And I didn't think it was really a service to either guy. I think it was just kind of a jumble at that point, and they weren't playing well. But I think to John's credit, of course they turned it around by going all in with Lamar after that. But I think also, like you mentioned, with so much turnover at so many positions, especially at quarterback, and now this offseason with the defense taking on such a new look, I don't think he's necessarily in a position where he's going to sound stale just because there's going to be so many new guys and young guys that are maybe hearing it for the first time, and it gives him kind of a refresher and a new challenge for himself. And John Harbaugh obviously loves a challenge, but now he's trying to do it with a new group, not the Joe Flacco, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs guys that were staples so long for this franchise. So yeah, it really is a dramatic reset for this organization. Really, it appears without having to endure one of those 4-12 kind of years.
Nate, I always like to point out we have the best kicker. I want to point that out. I do that every year. Nate Davis is here. He's USA Today. You can find him out at USA Today doing mock drafts. I thought we were going to do it the other way around, go around the league and then get to the Ravens, but obviously we jumped the gun on the Ravens and everything going on with them. Again, they are a little bit of an afterthought here. I've got to throw it back to your Twitter front. I sort of thought you might have been a Cleveland Browns fan, and maybe I didn't, hadn't outed that in you. Through all these years. Turns out you're a Jets fan. You stole C.J. Mosley, you dirty bum. But the Browns have been the story here, and I've been talking about it a lot. I've been poking fun at it a little bit, even with my Cleveland friends. I had Terry Pluto and Darryl Ryder on the last couple of weeks as we get ready for the draft around here. But it was fascinating to see John Harbaugh's sense of humor at the Biltmore in Arizona a couple weeks ago when I was sitting to his right, and they've extended these by like 15 minutes now, and the entire last half an hour was writer after writer coming from some other table and coming over and saying, so, John, I'm sure you've talked about this, but how about those Cleveland Browns, huh? And everywhere I go and everybody I talk to about the league, and I'm sure once ESPN and the NFL Network get a hold of this next weekend, it's going to be one big love-a-thon for all things brownies and dogs, isn't it?
Well, I think so. It's going to be interesting, to find out how they open the season. Do they get those 5 primetime games? I bet they'll get at least 4 or so. And yeah, I think this is going to be kind of, you think on the baseball side, this is going to they're going to be loved up the way the Cubs were before they finally won it, or the Red Sox, or whatever else. But yeah, I think this is probably the big story.
Man, that's going to be a dark day in hell when I got to go to a Super Bowl week and talk about and see Baker Mayfield 3 stories high behind me for a week on Radio Row.
I'm sure.
I'm not ready for that. You know what? I don't even have a picture of that in my mind. This is the first time I've ever really thought about that.
The entire city of Cleveland is coming with you, Nestor. I mean, they'll be out in force for that first Brown Super Bowl if it happens.
They already have a bar there called the Clevelander, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying.
Great point there, but. They loaded up. They look good, and I give them credit for kind of not screwing this up to this point. I was impressed that they stuck with Freddie Kitchens as their coach after all the success in the second half last year with Baker. I think that was the right move, rather than go out and try to make the splashy hire or whatever else. And then of course the big addition with Odell. I guess the question that people are going to have about this team, of course, is with all the personalities like OBJ and Baker Mayfield and that kind of thing. If it doesn't go well out of the chute, they start 2-3 or 1-4, God forbid, what happens then? But they certainly got the pieces.
Besides me applauding, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been put out to pasture, right? Like racial divide amongst Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin sort of holding the bag for all of this with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. I have been very, very loud on this. Not necessarily proud, because you know how I feel about the Steelers. I am not ready to bury Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin and that organization based on a couple of cocky players going out the side door. I've seen cocky players go out the side door who were tremendously gifted in Pittsburgh until they went to the next place. So I will reserve judgment on that. In the same way, I'm not ready to pave the orange path to Miami via the Cleveland Browns. I'm not ready to bury the Pittsburgh Steelers either.
Well, I think that's probably smart, and I think this, given all the talent that's left, and we saw this team performing pretty well for a while last year without Le'Veon Bell. James Conner getting hurt certainly I think was a blow that we didn't pay enough attention to when it happened. But they've got something to rally around, like you said. The whole wounded animal thing going on. No one is paying attention to them. So yeah, I wouldn't bury them either. And I think they've got something to rally around in that locker room and in that city now. And sometimes less is more. We'll kind of see, can James Washington step up and produce next to Juju Smith-Schuster the way that Juju did when Antonio Brown was there? I mean, I don't think we expect to see the same kind of offensive fireworks we have the last few years, but maybe overall this is a better team, and maybe they get a little bit more back to more of the punch-you-in-the-mouth Steelers if that defense steps up. But yeah, I wouldn't count them out either, and I think people do so at their peril.
Want to give some love to a couple of our WNST sponsors, including our friends at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and the Sizzling Steaks, the $39.95 deal. But listen, happy hour is where it's at. You might see me in Pikesville. You might see me at Pier 5. You might even see me in Odenton or down in Annapolis. Ruth's Chris, always with us. Appreciate all the love for all of our leukemia causes. And there goes my hero with Steve DeCastro there as well. LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute, Dr. Kevin Crutchfield, Dr. Craig Bennett joining us. And I've been wearing my Stan the Man Stasiak brace the last couple of days, making my elbow feel a little better here into the spring. LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute helped my wife run the half marathon here this summer as well. Shout out to Hammer and Nails. I wore the shirt the other day on the webcam. People have asked me, what is it? It's the Ultimate Man Cave Nirvana. It's over in Owings Mills, right in the town square. The manicure, the pedicure, the TVs, the adult beverages, and the hot towel. The hot towel makes a difference. Kind of like my cold towel in yoga. The hot towel makes all the difference. I need to shave right now, so maybe I'll be getting up there. Hammer and Nails, Owings Mills, right near the facility in the Owings Mills Town Center, where I joined Alan McCallum and saw the Negro Baseball Hall of Fame at the library there. You should check that out as well. Nate Davis is our guest. Nate, I'm going to read from your prose here at USA Today. With so much disinformation cruising the information superhighway, it's time to embrace the noise and delve into your favorite mock draft of the year, the annual trade edition. And I know you don't find it far-fetched to think that I would reach to you first for trade information, super information, disinformation, whatever it is, because the Ravens are, prone to trade and want to trade. And DeCosta, even at the Liars Luncheon, said, yeah, we'll trade back. But trading is something that, it's an incredible art form in the modern era, right? Like making these deals and getting on the phone ahead of time. We used to see a lot of it in the lead-up. Now a lot of it happens on the clock, right?
Well, I think it's both. Like you said, I think it depends on the team and the general manager and the level of experience. You listen to Mike Mayock talk. I think last week about how he, for all Mike Mayock knows about the draft and college prospects, he kind of admitted, no, I've never been in the room when there's 2 minutes on the clock and there's 3 phones ringing and guys trying to make a deal with you.
That's kind of a cool little side story too. Mayock drafting, right? This is fun.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be really cool. I mean, he's a fun guy that I think he's generally a straight shooter. You got so many of these GMs equivocating or outright lying to you. I think Mike, hopefully Mike never changes and always tells you, what he's thinking. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, it is an art form. And certainly it comes with experience. I would think Eric is going to have it after all those years of watching Ozzie artfully trade down and pile up picks the way the Patriots also do. But I think, you're well served to have stuff, ahead of time in place. I was trying to work on a trade scenario where the Seahawks and the Giants and the Jets maybe got together and Russell Wilson went to the Giants. Of course, that went up in smoke, late on, early Tuesday morning or whatever it was. But, if you're going to have that kind of a deal in place, you better have it beforehand because, who knows what the Cardinals are going to do. I think we know what they're going to do, but, if they do throw a curveball at you and go with Nick Bosa, you gotta be ready for the contingencies.
Well, the quarterback thing is the fascinating part of all of this, and it always is this time of year. No matter who it is or who they are, the quarterbacks dictate the draft. And we saw that last year with Lamar Jackson. It's dictated this year's draft for the Ravens, right? What they did with the quarterback position and moving up into that vaunted 32nd spot where you get a quarterback for an extra year. The Ravens got a bonus year in Lamar Jackson and wound up in a playoff run out of it. So, certainly not bad, right? Not bad value on the 32.
No, certainly not. And my like I said, that trade edition mock draft I put out, I had the Patriots taking Daniel Jones 32. I don't necessarily have Daniel Jones as a first round caliber kind of quarterback, but yeah, that's really valuable to get that 5th-year option on a guy, particularly a quarterback. Even if you're going to trade him down the line, the way the Patriots did Jimmy Garoppolo. Of course, he wasn't a first rounder, but we're still kind of waiting to see what happens with Josh Rosen in Arizona. Does he stay? Does he go? But if you've got that quarterback at a first-round value, you let that first team kind of pay out the good chunk of his money. A guy like Josh Rosen or say Daniel Jones in this case, if Tom Brady plays till he's 65, you can trade that guy, get good value back for him, and the team I think is willing to deal with you because you're not taking on a huge salary. You're taking on those extra years of control, and it's just another reason that I think those quarterbacks tend to get pushed off the board.
Nate Davis is our guest. You can find him on Twitter at @Nate Davis. He's out of the USA Today, mocking drafts and spreading disinformation out there in the draft process, as we're all doing here at this point. For you with the offseason and picking a team that may have moved a little bit in your mind, who's improved other than the Browns? We're all about the Browns, right? But give me another team that you think in the offseason has done some winning and improving. Maybe your Jets, right?
Maybe, we'll see. I'm always a little leery of teams that do a lot in terms of free agency because it always takes a while for that to kind of coalesce. You know, whether it's several guys or a key guy. Everyone fell in love with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins last year because he was the missing piece, of course, and then the team goes backwards. And so often in free agency, it's kind of a one step back, two steps forward, with that one step back being in the immediate year. But I think teams that, I always think continuity is such a undervalued trait in the NFL, and teams that are able to keep their core together, develop their players, re-sign their players. To me, those are the teams to watch. And I think maybe this is the year of the LA Chargers. Certainly the fans in Baltimore got a very good look at the Chargers in the playoffs. But I just like the way they keep progressing. Obviously you can't count on Phillip Rivers forever, but we've also seen that these quarterbacks tend to age like fine wine. And this is a team that added Thomas Davis. They'll get their tight end Hunter Henry back for a full season. Theoretically, Joey Bosa for a full season next year. I think people forget they tied for the AFC's best record with the Chiefs. Obviously lost a tiebreaker, but to me that's the type of team that's kind of under the radar. Keep an eye on them. Don't fall too in love with teams that make a whole bunch of splashy moves. Another one would be the Colts. I admired the fact that they had all that cap money to spend, but really are going to use it, I think, to draft, develop, re-sign their own players while being selective in free agency.
You're not the only one that said Colts, by the way, Nate. I'm hearing a lot more Colts in this offseason, that they've really fortified what they've done. They need to have a solid draft. One of the reasons they fell apart, not just the quarterback situation, they didn't draft well during the Pagano era.
No, well, not at all. No, Ryan Grigson made some terrible choices in the draft and was a guy that fell in love with free agents. And I think Chris Ballard is the opposite. He made a nice selective signing, getting Justin Houston for pass rush on his defense, which he needed. But he's drafted great so far, and he picked up those extra second rounders from the Jets last year, just to flip from 3 to 6. Ends up getting Quentin Nelson, and then the rookie of the year on the defensive side, Darius Leonard. Now he's got another extra second round pick this year. So again, to me, the Colts are a team that's could be doing more by doing less, if you will, and one that I'd keep an eye on.
Nate, always good to visit with you, man. It's been a little while, and, I know U2's not out. Congratulations on the addition with your thing here going on this summer. I'll be here watching Last Place Baseball and plotting Baltimore positive and trying to figure out how the Ravens are going to get the 10 wins here and watching the draft. Always a pleasure to visit with you. We'll be watching your draft coverage and following you along on Twitter @by Nate Davis. Always good to visit, pal.
Thank you, sir. Talk soon.
Keep the faith. The Stones will hit the road, man. They'll get back out there. Mick's putting it back all together. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Morning newspaper delivers digitally to your email inbox each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Always $5 down, $10 a month, and Planet of Triumphs there to inspire you through April and into May to getting into the best shape of your life. Also, the Maryland Jockey Club, they are racing at Laurel this weekend. The entries on the front of WNST.net, as well as in our morning newspaper. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on our WNST text service. Almost 10,000 of you on it each and every day. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Breaking news, next weekend there'll be a lot of that going on as the Ravens draft football players. You'll be binging all day Saturday if you've got your little ding on your Twitter, or your text, or your Twitter, or your Facebook, or your LinkedIn, or your Snapchat, or anywhere else that you are. We're adding social media. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. And don't forget, Dennis is here Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.